The moment you stop explaining, there is a recognizable pattern around explanation. A person gives reasons before acting, while acting, and after acting. The reasons are not neutral. They are signals about rank, risk, and who is allowed to judge whom. Frequent explanation hands evaluative rights to the listener. It tells the listener that their approval is a condition for movement. The pattern forms early in roles without mandate. The person needs permission, so they attach reasons to every request. It protects them in the short term. It gives them temporary safety from blame when outcomes go wrong. Over time, the environment treats the explanation as the payment for attention. The rate goes up as others learn the supply will always be there. In organizations built on review and consensus, explanation becomes the default currency. The explicable thinks reasons earn trust. The audience treats reasons as a bid for leniency. The meaning is different on each side. The gap is not noticed because both sides get something. The explicable gets relief. The audience gets control. The habit is reinforced by small wins. A manager relents after a long rationale. A partner softens when hearing the backstory. The explicable marks that as proof the explanation worked. Often the outcome would have been the same with fewer words. The cause is misattributed because the relief is immediate and vivid. This keeps the loop running. From the explicable's view, explaining is respect. It is proof they are not arbitrary. It is also an attempt to preempt conflict. They believe conflict is caused by missing information. They treat uncertainty as a technical problem and fill it with data, motives, and context. The signal they think they are sending is transparency. The signal received is deference. Inside the pattern, silence from others is misread. A nod is mistaken for agreement rather than impatience. A neutral face is labeled as curiosity rather than time pressure. A question is read as an invitation rather than a test. The explicable escalates detail in response. The listener reduces attention in response. The speaker loses the room, not time. When people anticipate pushback, they stack reasons before anyone asks. This teaches the group what to expect. The group expects a preamble, then learns to wait it out. The person learns to add more layers to prevent interruption. The exchange becomes a negotiation of attention, rather than a negotiation of outcomes. The long arc is set by repetition, not by intent. Power is assigned through who must explain and who does not. The person who must explain is downstream of the person who can say yes or no without reasons. The constraint is formal or informal. Formal authority controls decisions. Informal authority controls interpretation. Explanations concede interpretation rights first. After that, decisions are subject to negotiation, even when not explicitly open for it. The pattern feels justified because the costs of explaining are invisible in the moment. The costs land later and rarely as a single event. The feedback is delayed and indirect. The immediate consequence tension reduction feels like proof of strategy. The distant consequence eroded weight of words does not feel linked. The explicable blames the audience's bad faith when resistance grows. The audience is simply following the incentives that were presented. When the person stops explaining, it is not experienced as a strategy. It is experienced as a boundary. It follows exhaustion, loss of patience, or a private decision to stop feeding a process that never ends. The absence of reasons looks different than the presence of reasons. It is coded with different meanings by different observers. Those meanings are not under the person's control once emitted. Their patience runs out and doors start closing. The internal narrative at the moment of stopping is simple. I owe no more context. This is not said out loud. It sits inside the person as a shift. Behavior changes. Email replies are shorter. Meetings have fewer qualifiers. Decisions arrive with less framing. These shifts are observable, so they are interpreted using prior beliefs about the person's position and reliability. The same behavior carries different weight depending on prior status. A senior person who speaks in short statements is labeled decisive. A junior person who does the same is labeled evasive. The category is fixed before the words are heard. The same content travels differently through the group because the sender sits at a different height. The sender often assumes content will govern interpretation. It does not. Signals are misread on both sides. The person thinks brevity is neutral. It is not treated as neutral. It is mapped to certainty or hostility, depending on the observer's interests. The standard for decoding is not truth. It is convenience and risk management. People choose the interpretation that reduces their exposure and increases their options. Status slips quietly, and no one explains why. The explicable also misreads their own motive. They think they stopped explaining to save time. They actually stopped because the social return collapsed. They think their decision is about efficiency. It is about refusing a position they no longer accept. The difference matters because others are watching the position, not the time savings. In groups, explanation serves a coordination function. It tells others how to align their actions and how to predict future calls. The person who stops explaining reduces that information for the group. The group compensates without asking. They infer from patterns, from other people's side comments, and from outcomes. Those in adjacent roles become the source of reasons for everyone else. The source of reasons becomes the center of gravity. The person who stops expects that neutrality will land as neutrality. It rarely does. Withholding reasons is often read as withholding respect. Even if no one says this, behavior updates. Requests for input go down. Invitations to shaping discussions go down. The person's visible workload may not change, but the invisible chance to set terms declines. A move away from explanation also changes how risk is allocated. When reasons are offered, failure can be placed on the plan, the assumptions, or the context. When reasons are not offered, failure is placed on the person. Observers protect themselves by offloading uncertainty. They offload it to the person who keeps the process opaque. The person who wanted less evaluation receives a harsher kind. There is also a mechanical shift in who asks questions. The questions do not stop. They migrate. They are asked of those who still explain. They are asked in side channels. The person who stopped explaining sees fewer questions in their inbox and misreads that as efficiency. It is displacement. The interpretive work continues elsewhere. The cost is a move from centrality to marginality. From inside the pattern, the quiet feels like relief. The relief is not proof of effectiveness. It is proof of less contact. Less contact is not neutral. Less contact reduces the data others have to predict and support. Less prediction increases their need for control. They answer that need by constraining the person who does not supply information. In settings where authority is already settled, stopping explanation does not cause friction. The mandate is recognized. The group treats the decision as a signal of pace rather than a rejection of oversight. In settings where authority is contested or informal, the same move is coded as defiance. The group treats it as a withdrawal from joint governance. They will not escalate openly. They will escalate quietly. When the habit of explanation is long-standing, the change is unnatural to the person. They watch others watching them, can look for confirmation. The confirmation does not arrive. What arrives is reduction. Fewer follow-up questions in public, fewer challenges in the room, more post-meeting activity without their input. This reduction is misread as respect by some and as isolation by others. The long-term direction is not decided by intent. If the person believes that truth persuades on its own, they assume the move will surface truth by stripping noise. The assumption ignores how people conserve effort. Most people will not invest to reconstruct unseen reasoning. They will default to simple labels. Unclear, hard to work with, doing their own thing. These labels are not announced. They are used. Observers reassign meaning as soon as explanations stop. The person is no longer asking to be evaluated on reasons. Observers shift to evaluating on outcomes and ease of cooperation. If outcomes are strong and the person's rank is firm, the label stabilizes at decisive. If outcomes are mixed or the rank is ambiguous, the label shifts to opaque or self-protective. In both cases, the observer's behavior updates without confrontation. Reputation shrinks and access narrows without notice. Leverage moves through the path of least resistance. People need reasons to coordinate, to justify their own choices, and to cover themselves. If the original source of reasons goes quiet, they look elsewhere. The one who provides credible, timely reasons becomes the unofficial interpreter. That person gains influence because others anchor on their framing. The quiet person loses influence because their choices require extra effort to integrate. Authority drains, and no one asks questions. Respect is reallocated in small interactions. Calendar invites change shape. Meetings that used to begin with the silent person now begin with a different person who frames the matter. Decisions are still made, but the frame is someone else's. The person who stopped explaining is consulted when necessary and avoided when optional. Eventually, they are not in the room where the frame is set. A group's memory adapts. People remember who makes things easy for them. Explanations that remove uncertainty are remembered as cooperation. Silence that increases uncertainty is remembered as obstruction. These memories govern who gets first call when stakes rise. They also govern who is trusted with ambiguity. There is no need for a public challenge. Workarounds are efficient and quiet. Files are shared with different names copied. Drafts are circulated without the original owner on the first pass. The language in documents reflects a framework given by someone else. By the time the silent person sees the work, their options are constrained to minor edits or approval. Saying no becomes costly and rare. Their name stops deciding what happens next. Outcomes become predictable in their shape. When the person speaks, people comply to the visible minimum. Discretionary effort is reserved for the interpreter who keeps them informed. The silent person's projects meet deadlines, but fail to accumulate goodwill. When a mistake surfaces, narratives attach quickly because the groundwork of suspicion is already in place. The lack of prior reasoning is cited as the cause, even if it was not causal. The reassignment of credit follows the same logic. Without explanations to show intent and design, success is treated as routine or collective. Others present the justifications to leadership and receive the credit for clarity. The quiet person is said to have been involved, not central. This is not argued. It is recorded in how people talk. Relationships change without rupture. Colleagues stop volunteering extra information. They stop offering early warning about shifts in politics or expectations. They route sensitive questions to someone who will narrate the risk. The silent person hears about changes late, framed as finalized decisions. By then, their approval is assumed. Saying otherwise looks unreasonable and is noted. When rank is high and defended by formal power, the reallocation takes a different path. People comply, but they grow careful. They seek alternative sponsors for their own plans. They keep distance to avoid being tied to an unpredictable communication style. The leader's apparent strength is tolerated while the system builds buffers. Those buffers make that leader replaceable without drama. In flat groups, the consequences land as exclusion. The group does not expend energy to decode silence. It centralizes around someone legible. The silent person is present, but decisions form before they arrive. Their veto power decays because exercise of veto without shared reasoning triggers social penalties. The penalties are applied later in reduced support on future initiatives. Reputation is not a single block. It fragments. One slice reads competent. Another reads difficult. Another reads unsafe to escalate with. These slices are used contextually. The person does not see the fragmentation until it constrains them. By then, the labels have been reinforced by repeated small choices. Gatekeepers respond in predictable ways. Budget holders ask for documentation the silent person does not produce. Legal or compliance functions insert extra checks. HR or leadership assigns a partner to help with communication, which is an administrative method of installing an interpreter. The interpreter gains soft authority. The silent person's formal title does not change, yet the felt authority is redistributed. In external settings, clients or counterparties react similarly. They want to know how decisions are made. If they cannot see the chain, they lower exposure. They reduce scope, shorten contract terms, or add clauses that transfer risk back. These moves do not require a fight. They look like normal prudence. The network updates privately. Those who used to vouch for the person now caveat their support. Good work, but not communicative. Strong, but hard to read. The caveat is enough to reduce opportunities. Introductions still happen, but at lower levels and with less stake attached. The person feels ignored. The network is simply protecting itself. There is a narrowing of optionality. Fewer projects begin at the person's request. More assignments arrive as directives. Their calendar fills with execution rather than design. The long-term shape of their path flattens. Titles may hold steady. Leverage does not. Predictability increases for everyone else. The group knows what will happen when the person is asked to commit without context. They will give a short yes or no. They will not make a case. The group adapts by not bringing them into early discussions. This saves time for others and reduces friction. It also removes the person from the only stage where agendas are formed. Another pattern emerges around blame. Without a trail of reasons, failure is easier to attach to the last visible decision maker. The quiet person is the last visible decision maker. Even when they are not, the absence of shared reasoning makes it simple to assign them as responsible. Disputes do not happen. Stories settle without debate. This is not a single fall. It is a steady sorting. People who explain become brokers of coordination. People who do not explain become endpoints of execution or distant authorities. If the person had unambiguous authority, the endpoint model holds. If they did not, the endpoint becomes a cul-de-sac others avoid. Traffic reroutes according to perceived cost. Respect follows usefulness. Explanations create usefulness in groups by reducing the cost of aligning. Silence increases cost. Observers align with what lowers their workload and risk profile. They will not argue with the silent person about this. They will just act as if the person's importance has shifted. The longer the silence continues, the more it rewrites the past. People remember the person as always being this way. They forget the period of over-explanation. They anchor on present behavior to justify current allocations. The process becomes self-sealing. Future behavior is interpreted through the new frame. Departures from it are dismissed as exceptions. In public, nothing looks dramatic. Meetings end on time. Emails are answered. Projects close. The index that matters moves in one direction. Who frames, who decides, who is asked, and who is told. That index does not snap back. It drifts and it stays there.